Welcome to the official Axanar Podcast. I am your host, Jefferson Kelley. I am here with special guest Mark Edward Lewis. Today, we're going to be talking about his new film that just came out not too long ago, a few days ago, if you are watching this right when we release, the Icarus Maneuver. And Mark, I've got to tell you, the Icarus Maneuver was pretty fantastic. That was not only a spectacular film, but maneuver in universe itself. So there's a couple angles I would like to talk with you about. The first one being the idea for the film itself. Where did you come up with that? Let's hear a little more about the making of the Icarus Maneuver.
Sure. I did not come up with the idea for the film at all. In fact, it's written by Alec Peters. Definitely comes out of the original feature film script that unfortunately we're not going to be able to shoot due to the new quote unquote guidelines. So it was I think it's the very first scene from Axanar, the original script, where the Ares has really been untested in battle. And now their kind of first go round with it is with 2 D6s. And in the past, at least in the 4 Years' War narrative, D6s do a really good job of carving up Federation ships. So if you remember in Prelude, you've got a JG saying, you know, the Ares class look really good in simulations, real good, but data can only take you so far. The real test of a starship is battle. And so this is that first time. And, you know, they might actually be a little bit outgunned by 2 D6s, but due to some creativity on Garth's part and the we'll say guile of the crew, they withstand and go through. And that particular maneuver has been in our script long before the version of it that showed up in Picard, right? In season 3? Yeah, season 3.
Yep.
So, you know, when I saw that in Picard, I'm like, oh man, we had that like way before. But what's really true is what really attracted me to the entire Axanar franchise, which I've been in various jobs in over the years, now co-director, it was that it is based on the 4 Years' War, probably the most critical historical point in the history of both the Klingons and the whole Alpha Quadrant. So when I was a kid, my younger brother and I used to play Starship Combat Simulator and all the role playing that FASA, that company, made. Yeah. And they were the ones that capitalized on the Garth of Izar story. Really, they didn't canonize it, but they just went so deep with all of the storylines and how the captains were, and certainly how the ships developed, and some of the really fun things that we've been able to do in various fan films, especially with Mind Sifter, which I directed back in 2014. There's an end battle there with the Constitution class of the Enterprise and a D7. Is it a Mark? I think it's a Mark 7. D7. Okay. Which, if you've ever done that battle, just a Constitution and a higher Mark D7, you kind of know that, look, if that D7 gets a torpedo shot off and some disruptor shots, that Constitution is toast. It will eventually wither and die because all of the guns on a Constitution are forward.
Yes.
So if that D7 fires and kind of stutters the Constitution class, then it can avoid its own torpedoes that's coming to it and then get behind it. It's done. A couple of shots to the primary hull and it's over. Because one of the bad things about a Constitution class is the rear shield generators aren't the best. And if you can get a torpedo through the shuttle bay, it kind of keeps going. So
straight out the front.
Not a lot to stop it, you know. So, however, what we discovered was that if the Constitution can avoid that first torpedo, which is, you know, the Mark 7 and the Mark 6 torpedo launcher it launches, it's a Class X torpedo. I mean, you don't want to get hit with those. They'll make you cry. Right. So if you can avoid that, the disruptors are never going to really get to the shields. And if the Constitution can then bear down, you know, the weaponry on a Constitution or far exceeds the shielding on a D7, generally speaking, which is why I don't want to give anything away about Axanar, but there is a desperate cry for the heavy cruiser that's talked about in Prelude, where they're like, you know, the thing that could tip the tides of Axanar is the Constitution class. If it could come online, it would more than match the D7. But obviously, the big issue is they're going to go blow it up. They think they're going to go blow them all up at Axanar. Right. So our script takes place way before that, at the beginning, probably the earliest parts of the whole process, before Interlude, the first Axanar fan film with Jonathan Lane, long before that, when the Ares is just coming out and it's really untested. So some of the maneuvers that we're doing are really new and fun, and of course, tearing a warp nacelle off a D6 and using it is there's not too many raise shields that are going to stop that kind of inertia. So we had a great time with that.
That was pretty cool. And while I was sitting there, I kept trying to guess, what is this maneuver going to be? Because I had completely forgotten about how that was used in Picard. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, okay, let me see if I can guess what's about to happen here. And I didn't see that coming. Shoot off a part of a nacelle, tow it behind you and fling it at another ship. Yeah. Yeah. So that was pretty neat to see. And the way that the whole film was edited was really like a short movie, because it wasn't just set the camera here and have a wide shot of everybody and call it a day. You're in there moving in and out. And now I've been on that set and seen that turbo lift. How did you fit any more than a couple people in that? Because it's kind of tight in there. Yeah,
the turbo lift wasn't as much of a problem, although it is very tight in there. If you go to the website's theicarusmaneuver.com. I've got blogs in there where we talk about how that all works and pictures and things. But yeah, we had Adrian, Alec coming out of that turbo lift, but Vince, not Vince Conlon, but Vince, our Steadicam op. Vince came on. We knew we needed Steadicam. A Steadicam is a huge rig that fits over the shoulders and it connects at the waist, and it takes the weight of the camera on it and steadies it, thus Steadicam, so that you can kind of run and do all kinds of things. And the camera seems very smooth, almost like you had it on an infinite dolly that would just roll perfectly smoothly. If you don't do that, we call it hand holding a camera. The way the human body works, it creates all kinds of jitter and jerkiness that, in Born Supremacy was great, or Born Identity, but we didn't want that feel, that kind of everywhere. We wanted it to have a high production value. So Vince came on. He honestly had not done a lot of Steadicam work. He'd just gotten this rig. So he was excited. We were really excited. He came a day before and he showed up on the set. And like you said, that set is not very big. If you've been to Ticonderoga, New York, or any of the other, by the inch recreations of the Desilu studio bridges, those are kind of big. They're space. I've shot on several of them now. You can move around. I mean, the rails are a bummer, but it's not that bad. But the Ares set is about a third smaller than that.
Yeah.
And he's at least 6'4", probably 250.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so he's not a small guy.
He's bigger than me, and I'm 6'2", 240-ish, and he's bigger than me, and he's got this rig that's another 6-7 inches outside of him all the way around. So he's in this turbo lift. Adrian, Alec, and then Barry, our boom op, he's in there. And then I got Jeff, Jim, me trying to do instructions. And I remember our first take I was so excited because it was our first shot, almost our first shot. And I'm like, this is going to look great. This is going to be so good. No one's ever done this, a Steadicam on a fan film bridge, like a real Steadicam.
Right.
And like real pro. And I'm like, the very first shot, what no one has done on this bridge. Now, look, I've been with that bridge since it was in Los Angeles. When they were building it, when I lived out there, and Alec and I, we were out there. That bridge, we saw it being built. And so it's like kind of a home thing for me. Yeah. So I'm like, I can't wait. That opening shot is, we called it Rig for Yellow. So it's yellow alert. And, the big yellow screen and yellow lighting and yellow floor lighting that Dana did. And we're going to do this whole pan. We're going to follow Adrian. We're going to come off her shoulder. And then she's going to wipe in. And then we're going to see the whole bridge. And then right as Garth sits down, we're going to complete. And the first go around of this, Vince hit the engineering station so hard, he almost knocked, because Adrian was right there. He can't see it because it's below his vision. He's got a big camera right here.
Yeah.
He hit that so hard. He took a nick out of it, and he starts going toward the railing on the other side. And there's 2 big steps if he were to go over that railing.
Yeah.
And I remember, I'm 10 feet away on the other side of the railing because nobody can be in there, because you're going to see everything.
Right.
Everybody, if you're not in uniform, you're not there. So I remember they just grabbed him, and they're like, whoa.
This guy's 6'4", 250, wearing armor with the camera on, and he starts losing his footing.
Going this way over the railing. I'm like, no. So the shot that is on the website is us going, okay, wow. First of all, Adrian weighs like 15 pounds. She's just a small waif of a human being. And here's Vince, which is like 8 of her. So
it's like a blitzing linebacker.
Yeah, he really, seriously. But he's Nordic. So he's got the weaved beard, the blonde weaved beard.
Right.
It's like, okay, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. But we got this first shot in the can, and I was like, this is going to be I'm so pleased with how this is. We had lots of problems, especially unlike a Constitution bridge, the Ares bridge has a pilot section that is aft of ops and tactical in front of the captain's chair. So that's a whole huge console that he's got to figure out how to get around. And unlike on a Constitution bridge where the upper ring is not that high off the main floor, on the Ares, it's, what would you say? 2 feet?
2 feet easy.
Yeah. And so you're stepping down, and I've got shots where he's got to go down on the main floor, come around, and he's moving the camera, counter rotating with himself, and then coming back up. And he's like, guys, there's no way I'm going to hit this. So
because that first time I stepped down, I was not ready for. I said, "Wait a minute, that's 2 feet." About, I was not expecting that.
Yeah, it's not like, a couple of nice steps. If you step wrong, you're going all the way down. So we had a couple of guys spotting him, and he still, unfortunately, scraped up the pilot console and a few things because Dana's there and Scott are there with paint, so it wasn't damage. But we got those shots in, and there was a lot of concern because no one had done it really. A lot of concern that the shots, as we choreographed them, took too long, that they were slow. And we really wanted to recreate JJ Trek 2009, that opening Kelvin exchange, where it's just a lot of people running, except for the guy running in the background.
Yeah, what the hell? Where was he going?
What is he doing? What's that guy going? He's got to go to the bathroom in the middle of the war. What's the deal? So other than that guy, but there's just a lot of action, a lot of motion, and that's Steadicam. And they had dollies in there too. They probably spent a week shooting that sequence. I had a day to do a sequence that was probably about the same length, really about 5 minutes or so. And we had a very liberal shooting schedule with very complicated shots. So we were really grateful that Vince was able to come in a day early and kind of rehearse and tell us kind of what was going to work and be able to alter it. But we got there and we're rotating these shots, and there's somebody offset pulling focus as well, because we're not just on a big wide angle. Remember that the wider your angle, the easier everything stays in focus. We're on a very long lens trying to get nice shots in the blurred background.
Right.
And as nice and cinematic as that looks, it's suicide for somebody to try to pull focus, meaning get everything in focus. We want to try to get eyeballs in focus. And you'll see how hard it is on the very first shot, this one we're still talking about. Adrian comes out, we see the whole bridge, we come to Alec, and that's nice and in focus. And then he has to we call it whip panning. He turns the camera and smashes it into Vince, not in his face, but like he puts the glass right here. Yep. And the guy who's offset has got a little handle remote control handle to do the focus, you'll see just for a moment, he's out of focus and then he comes right back in just for that initial thing because Vince went so fast and he didn't have time to, the focus guy didn't have time to get it. It's dramatic. It's fine.
Well, and it looked like that was how it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it wasn't, but it's dramatic and kind of fun and more action.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, and I think that's probably the beauty of it is, you being there filming it, being the director and looking at the monitors, doing all of it. Yes, you can see all right, that was a little quick. I wish we could have had this or that. But watching it as a viewer, I mean, I can tell you, to me, that whole scene is going. I did not think for a second, even though I've seen some filmmaking done, I could picture how you were doing the movement, but you could have fooled me on that was not intended. Sure.
What ended up happening was there was a great deal of concern about how slow everything felt because, a 250-pound dude takes a minute to get places. And although I can cut and did cut things down, there was moments where I'm like, I love this bridge so much. Dana's done, and Scott and everybody's done such a great job lighting it. And then of course we go into Rig for Red, where we were looking for kind of a Das Boot or Hunt for Red October, because outside of a submarine at 1,000 fathoms is the same killer things out there, like you're dead as it is in space. So I'm like, well, what if it's just like a submarine thing, like where they're, in essence, if you go outside, you're dead, or if the hull breaks, you're just as dead.
Yeah.
So that same grunge thing, and of course, Bing did our color correction guy. Bing has he's in LA. He's been with us almost as long as me. So he and I have the senior next to Alec, obviously.
Gotcha.
So it was great to have him go, oh, I get that. And then what I get back is like, wow, that looks just like it was shot on Hunt for Red October, in the USS Dallas or the actual. It
really did feel that way. You had that very close in, because it can get pretty cozy in there. The station stuff, you're right there with everybody, and it was very much like a submarine type setting where it's not spacious. It's not a hotel lobby like a Galaxy class.
No,
it's not that. You're in like smaller than a 1-bedroom apartment with all the people right in there. It's close quarters.
I mean, it's far closer to the Defiant bridge.
Yes.
And which is really just a shuttle pilot, which is just a shuttle upgrade, is all that really is.
Yeah.
So and it's very tight. And for all our whipping around and jumping the camera and doing everything we could, there was just a lot of concern that it felt slow. And
well, you've got the small set, and then you've got this Viking running around.
Yeah. And I kind of had in my mind, because I've done so many productions, and I've, where post is kind of my Charlemagne. I know post. I know what's going to happen. We were also blessed with the fact that most of those visual effects shots had been completed many years earlier. Okay. So, I love doing the visual effects stuff, so I got kind of robbed on that one. But I'm glad we didn't also have to come up with a bunch of money we didn't have to go make visual effects shots. So those were done.
So those were already had been done prior.
Well, you've seen them all. I mean, every one of those shots, except for the warp engine, is in some version of Axanar's trailer. Because back in the day when we thought we were doing a feature, they were made. We were going to use them.
Right.
So, just go look back and you'll see, oh, there's that one. There's that one. There's them coming like this. It's all old shots. So when we looked at the rough cuts, there was a lot of people we'll say up the chain, they were like, well, this isn't really going to be that great. This is not what we really wanted. We really wanted something a lot more action, a lot more energy. And I'm like, just chill. Just chill about this. It's going to be great. I know you don't like it, but that's because we've never done this before. We've never had a steady cam. All we do is put camera on sticks or on a little slider, and we can cut on people's lines and cut people and do all these things that we're doing in Axanar, right? Because there's no steady cam in Axanar. It's all just the thing that we've been doing in Prelude. And so we can do all kinds of things where the next person talks while the other person's finishing their shot and all these great things that give us time. You cannot do that well when you're trying to move a camera and make it the camera a part of the character. So one of the things that I love most in production is sound design. And one of the great joys I think I've had in my life is spending no small amount of time making sound effect layers for what was in Prelude, Tobias's incredible visual effects where I made an orchestra out of every ship. It had all the multiple layers of sounds. It had the Bussard ram scoop thing. This one had this hull, this impulse engine, and then all the Klingon libraries. I have, libraries that we built, and we're underneath the freeway underpass recording trucks for the Ares, grinding up gears up a hill, and it was just so much fun doing that.
Yes.
And I knew that we would do the same kind of thing for the exterior shots. We took it to a whole nother level where we were putting now, if you listen carefully, when they're first firing the photon torpedoes, the Ares, you'll hear an ape roar because as it comes by, we just had so much fun adding angry, warlike elements. But on the bridge, we kind of looked at what makes, other than a massive budget, what makes JJ Trek, that opening scene, so great. And I watched it without sound. And of course, the visuals are great. We just don't have those visuals, putting junk in front of the camera that's wiping and, all these incredible lighting. I mean, we had basically 3 lights at that point. Yeah. We're 0 budget production. So that it is what it is.
Yep.
But then if you turn the camera off, the picture off, and listen to that scene, even now, if you go back and just close your eyes and listen to it, you're going to hear a menagerie of layers of sounds, not just footsteps and clothing, certainly not just dialogue, not just the button pushes, but call outs and people terrified, all on what in the Navy you would call it the OMC, the radio. Mm-hmm. Now, we never really know where these sounds are coming from, but they're just somehow on the bridge, like it was the CIC on a naval ship. And since it is a naval ship and we're trying to make it like a submarine, although in a submarine they'd be quiet, but we get over it. There's no sound in space anyway, right? Okay, who cares? I was like, we're going to have to add a significant amount of emotion that's subconscious with people talking over the actors, but reined in such a way that it doesn't compete with the actors too much, but gives a sense of, oh, we're yellow alert. It's not great, but we're okay. And then red alert, and we're all just in panic, and have waves and waves of subconscious emotion through these call outs. So, I live out in Western Tennessee by myself pretty much. So I don't got no friends out here. All my friends are in Nashville. And I'm like, that ain't gonna happen. So I called Dana and I go, here's what I want to do. Here's a script of, I don't know how many, 70 lines of, the Bussard ram scoop injection manifolds have been ruptured. I need more power. All the junk that we know about ships, just shit junk.
Going through all the stuff that's happening with the ship, the warp coils fuse, the phaser emitter is at 14%.
The plasma conduit on deck 3, junction box 2 has been even ruptured, and it's just incredible nonsense.
The Blaupunkt is jammed.
So he said, well, let me see. I got some friends coming over for Thanksgiving, and he's got a recording studio. That's where we're recording the audio drama, as you know. And he said, well, let me
beautiful house, by the way.
Beautiful, with the most incredible recording studio next to the greatest in-home beer bar ever.
I was so jealous. The whole thing, the whole setup. Yeah.
So good. He records all of these family members, regular old folks, not actors, which made it so good. So not rehearsed. And I just layered them in across the landscape of time throughout. And it just, until that track was in, people would watch and be like, oh yeah, it's good. I mean, it's still kind of slow, but yeah. When I met you at the last shoot for Axanar, I had just put those tracks in and a bunch of other sound effects and ambiances and things. And the people that hated it, well, they didn't hate it. They were just like, it's fine. Right. They were like, oh man, this cut's so much better. It's the
My anxiety is up now because of all the people talking.
Yeah, the people in the background talking. And I'm going to be submitting it next week to some film festivals, so we can actually hopefully hear it in 5.1 surround in a theater. But yeah, and that's how I mixed it. I've mixed it that way. It's so immersive in the 5.1 situation. But even in the stereo, I call it the hip hop mix stereo that we're going to hear, that you're hearing now. On YouTube, you can hear those guys in there and they're fighting with the dialogue. You can hear the dialogue, it's fine, but they're just, man, there's a lot of energy going on. And all it is Dana's family hanging out at Thanksgiving.
The magic of sound recording.
It's true.
Just put a microphone on the dinner table during Thanksgiving and just let it go.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to hear that private stuff, but at least it was scripted.
Right. Give everyone a script and just read off lines.
Yeah, just read it off. It was so great. I mean, not everybody did everything great, but everybody that recorded is in there and they had their own unique vibes. And yeah, I was really pleased. And we dropped that in and it was like, wow, this is super successful.
Well, and that's a good way of being able to add energy, speed, and excitement to a scene without physically running around with a camera, whipping around different cuts. It's just by the hurried conversation that you hear in the background. Because yes, that's a big thing. And I definitely notice is you have your foreground actors talking, but you can hear the background commotion happening as well. And it didn't take away from the foreground, but you knew it was happening. And it's like, okay, this is a stressful moment now because you can only imagine this is what it would be like to be on the ship. And you're right. When you take that audio track away, and I can see where it feels like you definitely added to it with that idea, which I think was a great idea to have to do it that way. And it's that attention to detail I've got to tell you, is pretty spectacular. And it's probably why you're on the project and why you're one of the co-directors for Axanar. It's because of those small details that you add in that just really changes the whole scope and dynamic of a scene.
Yeah, it's okay to do the basics, but it's not okay to rely on any one of the major disciplines to get media to feel otherworldly or bigger than life. If you do a good script, if you have nice cinematography, if the performances are good, you've got reasonable music and you can hear everything and it's mixed in color, that doesn't mean that you have something that feels Hollywood. You have something that feels nice, that tells a story, but doesn't transport me or immerse me in another world. And whenever we do fantasy or sci-fi or even just regular narrative, there's so many little details that go into kind of polishing it up to be Hollywood spec. I'm not saying mine's the greatest thing ever and it competes with JJ Track. It doesn't. It's its own little thing. But it's important to know what details are going to make the maximum impact. This mix is about 260 tracks deep, which is about where a fan film or short film would show up. A feature film, we have thousands and thousands of audio tracks.
My God.
But really we only have 2 locations. So it was not a lot. It was inside and outside. The outside pretty much is the same sound palette and the inside never changes. So if we'd had to move to the sick bay or the captain's quarters or the transporter room, then we'd have way more tracks because different kinds of sounds go there. So when you know that, oh, hey, sound is at least 80% of the audience's experience, not the visuals, then you have an advantage over the filmmakers that argue with me about that. So, and the easy way to look at it is silent films, if visuals were so great, silent films would not have needed to have some poor fool in there in the early 20th century playing piano or organ to keep people's interest. Conversely, if audio wasn't that interesting, in the 40s, we wouldn't have had people throwing themselves off bridges because they thought it was the end of the world from a radio show.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And the answer to me lies in, Disney figured out early on in the 20th century that I can fool people into believing there's motion happening at about 13 frames a second. People think Mickey or Mortimer Mouse is running around and I'm only flashing 13 odd pictures a second. Now, obviously more is better, but your brain goes, yeah, he's moving. It's animation. He's animating.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the 80s, we discovered through digital audio that the minimum frame rate you can use to fool the ear into thinking that it's sound is 32,000 frames a second.
Okay.
If you go lower than that, your brain goes, what is that? It's weird. It's not real. So there's an information difference of thousands of orders of magnitude between what your eye produces information for your brain and your ear. So we have to cater to the stuff that we tune out in order to create realism, which doesn't make any sense and drives all the sound recorders on set mad because they're trying to make all the dialogue super clean and no other noises. As soon as we get that audio back in post, we're adding the noises back in, but we have the control, obviously. We're adding the footsteps and the leaves and the dogs and the cars and the airplanes and the air conditioning. We're adding all that back in. Yeah. Why would we do that? What, doesn't that muddy it up? Yes, but your brain spends most of its time tuning stuff out.
Yep.
Like right now, the fans on your computer, you're not hearing them. Of course, you're in headphones. But right now, I've got a fan on my computer. I have an air conditioner here. I've got stuff outside. I don't hear any of it until I choose to focus on it. Not to mention, you're not focused at all on the pressure of the chair on the back of your legs.
Right.
You are now. Because I directed your focus, and that's what directors do.
I just thought that. Why did you do that?
Yeah. I can't not see it.
Yeah, now I gotta
move. So the director's job is to direct the audience's focus into the 3 or 4 things upon which they can focus, but give them enough immersion that they are in a place where it's like, oh yes, I'm tuning out the appropriate things so that I feel immersed. But all that's happening is their brains are now tuning out more things, and the more things that they tune out that are unobtrusive to the story, they feel immersed. And that's a huge difference between a Hollywood film and a fan film. And the more people in fan films get that, hey, if I'm putting in 60 tracks of junk that the audience needs to tune out, that's how I get us. That's a really good place to start getting a Hollywood vibe. Then we're going to start winning. And that's a big missing in even just independent films. I mean, you go to festivals and you're like, why didn't I like that? I wanted to like it. What happened there? Because you were just looking at your watch. Your brain had nothing else to tune out. It's the music, it's an ambience, and it's the dialogue, and the door turnings. And this, you need way more stuff to create immersion. Now, the good news with Axanar is we're not doing a narrative. We're doing a documentary. So a lot of that stuff I don't have to do because people are expecting to have somebody narrate and tell me. But we're still going to go through and do the Foley if we didn't quite pick it up, and we're going to have ambiences in there, and of course with the space effects, it'll be off the wall.
So what you're saying is the way to go is you've got to give your brain enough to tune out so that it's, I guess, satisfied and not tuning out the important part, which is your main audio, dialogue, and video.
Yeah.
Okay. I know.
Nobody thinks about that, but that's one of the secrets for immersing the immersive environment is if you don't put in the audience's ears stuff that it would normally be tuning out, the audience will have a very difficult time connecting with your story, which drives writers crazy. They're like, oh, but I wrote great dialogue. It don't matter, Susie, because the mixer didn't put this stuff in. They're just going to go, okay, well, so what?
Right.
And then when we get to, we talked about this with Jonathan Lane when we did Interlude, because I mixed Interlude. Mm-hmm. And it was very difficult for and I didn't work with Josh very much. I really more worked with Jonathan. It was very difficult for Jonathan to kind of grasp what do I choose? I've got sound effects. Obviously, dialogue have to be up. You can't have, unless you're, Chris Nolan, who doesn't care about his dialogue, I guess, anymore. But, dialogue's got to be audible. We got to have that in the front.
Right.
And then you got music and sound effects. Well, Jonathan and most directors who don't understand just want everything loud. Well, you can't have everything loud.
Right. No, you can't.
The dialogue's going to be hard to hear. So we have to do the balance between sound effects and music. But the question is, how do I know when to do one or the other? It isn't just because sometimes you want to have music up in a space shot, like at the end of Interlude when the Artemis is being destroyed. The sound effects, there's all these sound effects we did, but they're way down and the music's up. Why would we do that? The choice is with music, it's emotion. What do you want? Do you want the audience to feel emotion, or do you want the audience to feel immersion? Do you want them to be gripped by what's happening and be in it? Or do you want them to be feeling more? They don't kind of do the same job. So as you move the balance between them, then you get to manipulate the audience's focus again and have them focus on what you wish. And it's all in sound. So that's a powerful thing to kind of realize, another little Hollywood trick for how to balance out all these great sound effects that you have in a sci-fi film, but don't just hammer people with both. Pick one. You can move them from time to time. But anyway, I know I'm getting into like the theory of it, but that's
no, I love this stuff. This is very good stuff because when I came back from the principal photography wrap, just in watching everything that was happening there and seeing how things were shot, there was a lot of stuff that I took from that in regards to because there are fan films that I want to film as well, and there's some shots I set up where I have been doing some recordings for different fan film creators with a character of mine and reading off the lines, and I have my setup, and I'm thinking in the same mind frame that it was like on that set of how you want to have things framed and what you want your audio to be, and even where the camera should be based on your movements. And it's just in the filmmaking, there's a lot you can learn just by watching other work and getting other ideas, and to see, oh, that's how that shot happened, because the camera was on a slider and you went that way with it. And things like that, which is, I think, not a lot of people get to see something being filmed to be able to see, okay, well, what does it look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, a lot of people think they can learn how to make films by watching them, and that's just, you
really can't. There's stuff you can pick up, sure, but you really get into it when you see how it was done. Yeah. I think for anyone who's wanting to get into filmmaking, you can tell me if I'm wrong, watch behind the scenes videos.
That helps. But the best thing, I learned how to edit watching editors. Mm-hmm. I obviously had editors cut my very first films back in the early aughts, but because I didn't know anything about it. And I said, I remember my very first short film. It's called Barely Alive. And it was shot on a very first HD camera that was back when it was $100,000 to shoot at 1080p. Big old thing, Yeah. Sony F900 is what it was. And there was a shot where this guy is at a bar, and we shoot him, and he's looking down on the bar at this piece of paper. And then we cut to the camera over it, kind of doing this, establishing what that piece of paper is, which is a divorce agreement. He's getting divorced. And then cut back to him. And I remember in the editing bay, in my mind, I was like, okay, it's supposed to see him, his point of view. He looks down, and then we see the divorce agreement, and then we come back to his reaction. That should work. Why doesn't that work? And he cuts it in, and I'm like, it seems so abrupt. Why is that so abrupt? It feels like, why doesn't it feel smooth? He's like, no, this is perfectly smooth. This is exactly what you shot. This is exactly what we want. It doesn't get any better than that. And I'm like, I don't understand why. We went around for like 10 minutes. I'm like, I don't know. Can you move this, move that? Finally he goes, I know what it is. And he plays it for me again. And I'm like, oh, that totally fixed it. And I knew it didn't change the cut. The cut was exactly what we saw 2 seconds ago. I'm like, wait, what did you do? He goes, I turned off the audio.
Okay.
Because the audio at that time is just the camera audio, which is, and then but when it's over here, now it's and then it's down here. It's
so it's like he turned off the camera and
turned off the audio, and then it was just a picture. And I was like, oh, it's perfectly smooth. He goes, I know it's perfectly smooth. You should know better. You're an audio guy. I'm like, I didn't even think about that. Of course, yes. So you wouldn't know that. You would make this crazy mistakes because somebody with experience would go, dude, just chill out. This is how this works. Sort of how like I felt. I'm like, I know these shots seem slow, but trust me, it's going to be all right. Once we get all the elements packed in there, no one's going to want to feel like, this is so boring, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's the same with acting in front of a green screen.
Yeah.
Is you record the footage and you're looking at it, and of course it looks boring. You're standing there, you're looking at something that's not there with a background that hasn't been put in yet. Mm-hmm. And but that's something that you hear about a lot on a lot of these films that are really heavy in special effects, especially Star Wars. Yeah. There were a lot of different interviews where actors voiced their frustration and displeasure of basically they were acting at a green screen. There was nothing to, no one to talk with. I remember there was a big one from, oh my God, played Gandalf in Magneto.
You're talking about Sir Ian McKellen.
Yeah, Sir Ian McKellen was very displeased with basically talking to green screens, and because everything gets put in later. So yeah, I can definitely see where you have to think of it as when it's going to be a finished product and not the rough cut, not the raw silent, without your tracks moving in.
Yeah, there's just so much more that goes into the production than just what's in the script. And I know writers hate me for that, but you could write a no dialogue script, and I promise you, we could make it great. But one of the things that is perhaps most important is the music, and the music is the giant thumb that mashes whatever the writers or the actors thought they were going to have the audience feel into what the music says you're going to feel. So one of the examples I like to say is, imagine you're in this you're watching this really grotesque horror scene and blood and guts, and it's your favorite character getting chopped up, and you're like, oh, this is so hard. I feel terrible about this, but we score it with German polka music and tubas.
Right.
Everybody's laughing.
Yeah.
That's a powerful realization when you realize the power that music can just wipe out, if you do it wrong, everything that you meant to do, which is why one of the reasons why I never edit with music. Because what happens, a lot of editors, I love to cut to music. No, what you're doing is ruining your scene. You're forcing your scene into the mold that this pre-made music says it should go to, instead of the intrinsic nature of the scene. That's why when we did the assemblies for Axanar, I didn't cut music in. We were just doing it raw. And talk about ugly. You're looking at visual effects shots that are text. Visual effects 36. The Ares does this with this Klingon. But it's never going to be worse than that.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it plays without music, then you're like, okay, that's the cut that feels right. The performances and everything else, how the edit works, that feels great. Then when I add music in to see, does the cut actually flow? And we've done that with Axanar now that we're in soft lock mode. With Axanar. But with Icarus, it was the same thing. I knew that I wanted to have the James Horner Star Trek 2 and 3 feel.
I felt that. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And that, so once I got the cut to a place I thought, this is feeling great, then I just dumped a bunch of that stuff in there just to go, does it still feel right? And it's like, yes, it does. So I took it back out, and then obviously I was the one going to have to score it. So, I just took that James Horner palette, may he rest very well, and then added these, it was so much fun because I've got the Star Trek theme. I've got the Jerry Goldsmith Klingon theme. And of course, Alexander Borenstein's Axanar theme. I got these huge themes that are just so useful to be able to use. And then in the palette of James Horner, it was like, it was just a lot of fun. The one thing that most people don't realize, except those who understand the Jerry Goldsmith scores, is we have and had the rare opportunity to be able to put a blaster beam into the score. Do you know what a blaster beam is?
Yes, that's what they used in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It's where you get the bong.
Yeah, it's the sound of V'ger, basically.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But they used it in 2 and 3 and 4. It's all throughout Picard. It's in Strange New Worlds. It's certainly throughout Transformers.
Yep.
So basically a 15 to 16 foot piece of aluminum that has 24 odd strings stretched across it, huge metal strings. And you use any kind of hammer you want, and then a big metal an aluminum pipe to push on the strings to change the pitch. And you slide it up and down. It makes the most amazing noises. So my brother,
very distinct. Yeah.
Very distinct. You can't miss it. My brother spent the last 3 years building one.
Oh,
He has one in Orange County, California. And so last December, when I was out there, we recorded the heck out of it. So the blaster beam, he has this very special blaster beam. It's actually got strings on the underside as well that sympathetically vibrate. So no blaster beam has that.
right.
We actually used it because we had so much tension on the aluminum. It was bending the aluminum up like this.
Oh, ow. I'd be afraid the thing would snap.
Yeah, we indeed were. That's 250 pounds of aluminum to go bonk. No, let's not do that. So we engineered. I'm not an engineer. This is not me. This is my brother. He's got the engineer brain. He engineered strings to go underneath to keep it level, which they happen to make pitches as well. And you can actually tune them to be sympathetic. So it's a very unique blaster beam sound that no one's ever heard. And I use it throughout the score. It's not easy. It's not hard to miss it, especially in the first 7 seconds of the credits, you hear this bar that's going on. So it's fun. And it was just an honor to be able to use my own brother's crazy concoction that's very Star Trek in this score. So
and I'm sure he enjoyed being able to hear that. Has he seen it or heard?
Yeah, I've seen pieces of it. Yeah, he hasn't seen the finished.
I'm
by
sure
the time this airs, I'm sure he has. But
yes, yeah, I'm sure he's pretty excited about that. And you were talking about the music adding to the scene and matching the scene.
Yeah.
And you'd mentioned Christopher Nolan earlier. In The Dark Knight, remember behind the scenes on that that steadily rising sound that's like the Joker's, like you take a violin and you just slowly scratch it down what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, it's called the Sul Ponticello is what it's called. When you take the bow up next to the bridge of the instruments and it gets very raspy and shrill. And he actually used that and some other guitar EBow effects to make that. That's so annoying. You're just like, oh, I hate him.
And didn't they? I think I remember they kind of like tuned that and made it to where whether it was the pitch or decibel level or something, that it would make actually physically uncomfortable. Like you can do that with sound, and they did that.
Yes.
Wow. So yeah, it's you'd be surprised what sound, music, and audio can do to influence not only emotional reaction but physical reaction.
It just depends on how R-rated you want to get with this podcast. But the original performances of Craig Huxley, who built the original blaster beam on TMP, in order to pay for it. By the way, Craig Huxley is the ginger in the children, the TOSA episode where the kids take over the Enterprise. What's the name?
Yes,
he's the ginger.
I can't recall the name of the episode, but I know exactly.
Yeah, Craig Huxley. Go look him up. You'll see. And like, oh wait, he's a Star Trek guy. So he builds the blaster beam. But in order to help fund it, he had these performances, this big 15-inch thing, and people would show up. But the performance it's so low. If you sit on the amplifier, women get orgasms.
Oh.
And so he would play these things and women would come up and sit on the sit on the amplifier, and whether or not it was all staged.
All right, that's $10.
But it's like, it's $33. It's 33 hertz. It's just the right thing for you. And then you're like, oh, it's like, I don't know if that really works. You have to turn that up pretty damn loud. But, whatever makes a buck, Chris or Craig.
Yeah, and made a mint doing it.
He might have. I don't know. Although I think his royalties off TOS are pretty good these days.
Yeah, they are and probably always will be. Well, Mark, I want to thank you so much for spending the time with me, sitting down and talking about this. Fortunately, Alec was not able to make it on this one, but he's definitely excited about this as I am. And could you tell us a little more about the film festivals that you're talking about submitting to? Where might we be able to follow up with that to see if you've made it to any of those festivals? Like on your social media would be the best way?
It'll be all on the website, theicarusmaneuver.com. And we'll be doing blog posts there. There's already going to be videos on the sound effects, on the music, then there's music and sound effects only versions you can watch if you're really into that. Most people don't realize that I am the author of the largest format education for filmmakers on sound for picture in the world. It's called cinemasound.com. So whenever I do media, I always have to go back and then do all this education stuff to share with all my members. Okay, here's how this works. Here's how I do this special thing. Here's the blaster beam goes. And so all that will be on the IcarusManeuver.com. Whenever there's a festival that accepts us, I'm entering into 3 Tennessee festivals because I live in Tennessee,
right?
And a couple others. One's in California, and the other one's West Coast. So we'll see how it goes. My problem is I have to get this out and into festivals before Axanar comes out. Because once Axanar comes out, they're not going to want to have my Icarus Maneuver in there. So I'm kind of like, let's get it out there before Axanar shows up.
Yeah, you got to hurry on that, right?
I do, yeah, indeed. I happen to know the schedule on Axanar, so there we go.
That's good. And we're all very much looking forward to that one. I know I am. We've been talking about that a lot. And looking forward to Axanar coming out and looking forward to seeing more of your work on screen.
There will be plenty of that. I'm not writing the music for it, but I'm definitely doing the sound effects for all of that fun stuff and the ambiences. And let me also say one more thing. Dana Wagner, who is chiefly responsible for the look of the bridge from a computer perspective and all the screens and all the animations that he did. I deployed his talents in sound. Mm-hmm. So on this, so many of the sound effects on the bridge and the ambiences, he developed all that. We had a great time, great collaboration working together. And I promise you, we're going to drop him into sound for Axanar.
That's great. I'm sure he's going to enjoy that as well. So for those of you that want to stay up to date and in the know on Axanar and Axanar News, please go to Axanar.com and subscribe to the newsletter. That's the best way to stay informed. And then for Mark Edward Lewis and the future of his film, The Icarus Maneuver, it is the IcarusManeuver.com. Okay, so we'll have the link in there for everyone to see there as they're watching this podcast interview. So thank you, Mark. Greatly appreciate it, and hope that all of your future projects go well. And I know we'll be talking again soon about all stuff Axanar.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Great. And everyone listening and watching, live long and prosper.